Okay, so I just finished watching the rest of this Joe Rogan Experience podcast with Tom DeLonge, and my God, does this guy make a freaking idiot out of himself or what? Just look at this stuff. He goes over, gets up off the podcast to go over to this guy's
You'll
computer
get to,
They'll be able to.
to bring up a fake video of the TR3B to show him, and this is his like coup de grace on the TR3B, and you guys got to see this, dude, and Joe's reaction. I'm just gonna play it for you again right here. This is where it gets really ridiculous. So he brings up the video and just
Listening and you want to go check it out. TR38 Astra Aurora Project
3B.
USAF. Oh, 3B, sorry.
This is the Craft and Secret Machines book. That's all I'm going to say.
And this thing is floating in the air.
that's all I'm gonna say. Listen to him.
It'll take.
What the hell are you saying then? What the heck do we need you for? What the heck? If you're not saying anything, why do we need you, Tom?
Well, that looks pretty badass.
Oh, wait, you can see little lights dancing around on the bottom. But I think this was leaked on.
You see that blur? That is an intentional lens blur. That is a CGI effect that is done in a video editor. That blur. That is not like the camera focusing and unfocusing.
Purpose, because the guy's making it just hard enough to see, moving the camera around in and out of focus.
Yeah, right? Like it's got like, he's barely focusing. Boy, that looks like a drone.
Well,
It looks small, too.
it's not. That's pretty big. I would think that one's about 40 feet.
Really?
Look, see the tail fins on the back? That's how you know it's not alien per se. It's built off, I think, technology that came from there, but, you know, they don't need vertical tail stabilizers.
What's that big light?
Are you
Okay,
guys
this is
seeing
the
this?
engine. They turn it on. So right now they're accessing that energy I told you about. Now, and watch what happens. It's gone. There's a pilot in that.
If that was in a movie, I'd want my money back.
You see, even Joe's like, dude, that is not real. Like, are you serious? It's such a joke, man. I cannot believe this guy. Anyways, if you guys want some good information on the TR3B, you can go to my website, alienscientist.com/tr3b.html, or you can just scroll down on my main page and find a link to this. And I have some of Ed Fouche's original drawings of the TR3B, and some of his information on disclosures and some of the stuff from his original presentation. As you know, Ed Fouche was a personal friend of mine. He was the only alleged former Area 51 employee who's provided like real documentation that he's actually worked at Area 51, and we can prove it with his FOIAs and his military records that he actually worked there. And he was the first guy to disclose or talk about the TR3B, and pretty much everyone else who's come out and talked about it since has pretty much copied Ed and me, because I did put out a whole bunch of stuff on the TR3B's centrifuge anti-gravity mercury plasma accelerator ring and this magnetic field disruptor. And I've done tons of videos on that and talked about the theory and some of the physics behind that and some of the experiments we'd like to do, and also some of the issues that I've had with Ed's description and his numbers here, which don't make sense. So yeah, I've done extensive research into this, and I can tell you and will tell you, and I'm not just going to tell you to go buy my book and read my book. It's all for free on my website and my videos. You want to donate money, you can donate money to me, but I don't ask for money or charge money for this information like some people. All right, let's continue.
And during those background checks, he was already working on this stuff. They found that his wife was going a little haywire because he couldn't tell her what he was doing, and he would leave in the middle of the night. He would be gone for a week, and she was getting fed up, and so she started having an affair. And so they're listening in on all the phone calls and checking him out, and they're kind of going, his home life is unstable. So they stopped calling him to come into work while they figure it out. He knows. I mean, he's working next to a guy with a machine gun. He knows that that this is no fucking joke. No one knows what he's been doing. He thought he did something wrong. So as the nervous individual he is, he runs to his friends and says, this is what I've been doing. This is what I've been working on. There's alien craft. It's over here at Groom Lake. And the tests are every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock.
Okay, so one second. So if you caught right there, Bob's story, he ran to his friends, okay? Never mind that his wife's having an affair on him. They're tapping his phone calls, and they're going to look into at least a little bit of this guy's background before they give him a job here. And they're going to find out that he's friends with this guy, who's an avid UFO researcher, UFO buff, all about Area 51, knew all about Area 51. The idea that Bob Lazar was the first person to disclose the existence of Area 51 or its location to the public is a complete lie, all right? He may have exposed S4, all right? He did not expose Area 51. Lots of people knew about Area 51 before Bob came out. This is a lie. He only disclosed this super sub-secret section of Area 51 called S4, which again, no one's ever confirmed that S4 is a real place or that it exists. So really, what did he tell us? But back to my original point is that just being friends with a guy like John Lear would have immediately got him fired and immediately caused him to get discharged from that position. He wouldn't even be allowed in the base or near Area 51 if they knew he was friends with this guy, which I'm sure even if they did a quick background check on him, not the standard 6 to 8 months, that they would have found that he is friends with this guy, especially if they're listening and they know that his wife's having an affair and listening to all those phone calls. They know that he's friends with these guys and talking to these guys. And these guys are the last people that you'd want to be friends with or talk to if you really wanted a job at Area 51. And I'm sure that their security would have realized that he was friends with these people, and that would have made him an immediate misfit and got him immediately fired. And it's my personal belief that John Lear and Gene Huff both helped Bob make up the story and come up with the flight times. They already knew about this because they were avid researchers and buffs about the base and the secret test times at night. So they already probably knew about all this stuff. It didn't come from Bob. That's my theory anyway. And you know, you can believe what you want that Bob was this genius physicist who worked at Area 51 and that element 115, which I'll get into in a second, because some of the stuff that he says about element 115 is a little bit wrong. Let's get back into that.
The energy source was an element that was very heavy, and it was like unobtainium or something like that, 115 element. And 25 years ago, we talked all about it. And then literally 3 years ago, maybe 4, they added it to the periodic table.
What is this stuff called again?
I think it's called unobtainium. It's element 115.
You think? So how much research have you really done on this? Like, you think you can't even know the number of the element? Of course, the number of the elements just telling you how many protons there are. What we'd really be interested in is how many neutrons there are, or the isotope that this element is, because yeah, they discovered it a couple of years later, but they never found a stable form, and especially not one with these crazy, ridiculous properties that Bob Lazar describes. So I just want people to do their actual research on element 115, on unpendium, or moscovium, as the Russians call it. Find out that there is not a stable isotope. Yes, they created it in a particle accelerator. You can create these super heavy atoms by smashing other super heavy atoms together and getting them to stick momentarily. But they only stick for a couple of milliseconds and then fall apart and decay into smaller atoms. They're not stable. You cannot make a metal out of this and use it as a fuel source. Now, theoretically, if you wanted to use have a fuel source where you converted most efficiently mass directly to energy, yes, you'd probably want a super high heavy element like 115, where literally this as much stuff packed inside the smallest amount of space as you can possibly fit, because that's really what you're talking about. So if you were to, yeah, theoretically a fuel source, that would make sense, a really high element, and lots of people knew that back in the 1980s. It didn't take a lot of genius or a lot of creativity. Also, if you look up all the old chemistry textbooks, and I have a picture of this that I showed before, but all the old chemistry textbooks used to have these higher elements in parentheses with their predicted atomic weights and predicted things about them based on the elements that came before them. And right in the periodic table in those books, it would say predicted though not yet discovered. So anyone who had a high school chemistry book back in the 80s or 70s would have been able to predict that scientists would one day discover element 115. It wouldn't be that hard.
Yeah. Stanton Friedman, who's a very famous UFO researcher, he's one of the main guys arguing that Bob Lazar is full of shit.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is there is a I know the guy that did all the research on that, and I know the guy that studied it for decades, and he's actually writing a foreword on the book. It's the journalist has won like 8 Peabody Awards and Emmys and shit. George Knapp, who I told you about, and he's just got like he can speak for hours on that entire thing.
He's always on the Coast to Coast show, right?
Yeah, he does like a couple Sundays each month.
George Knapp launched his career and made millions off the Bob Lazar story. Even Knapp admits, if you go and search for this video, Bob Lazar, George Knapp education, and go about the 1 minute mark, 1 minute and 10 seconds.
$1,000 worth of.
He admits right here that he doesn't really believe Bob Lazar anymore.
This is the most bothersome part of the story, and I've talked to Bob many times. I think we're friends. I have offered him the opportunity to tell me, Bob, did you exaggerate about your educational background? Because a lot of people do that. You know that in every walk of life, in every occupation, they would exaggerate something on a resume, and he's always stuck to it. As for professors, he gave me the name of one at MIT.
All right, one professor, really? I know all my professors from college, like that I took physics from. I don't understand this. None of his story makes sense, especially in the age of Facebook. I've already pointed this out. You can go and find classmates. Get him on with me and a panel of experts and see if his story can handle scrutiny. I'm not going to waste my time. I know he says George Knapp could talk for hours on the subject. I could talk for hours on the subject too. I already have made a couple videos. So rather than waste everyone's time here rehashing stuff that's already been debunked, if you really want the information, type in the Lazar Report, Michael Schratt, and you'll get this link right here. And I encourage you all to read that file and watch some of my other videos on Bob Lazar. Go to my website, alienscientist.com, boblazar.html. You can find it under the debunk bin. Bob Lazar is right here in the top left corner. And if you scroll down here to the bottom of the page, you'll see a link here to my in-depth physics discussion on element 115, where I go over all the physics and all the important details. Unfortunately for Bob, there's really nothing in the scientific literature to support a stable isotope of element 115 of anything more than a couple of milliseconds. Certainly not something that you could shape into wedges or triangles. We really don't find anything in the physics literature about gravity waves or any of the stuff that Bob Lazar talks about. Of course, you know, his arguments that it's well above our physics and what we know. But hey, I guess I'll keep an open mind and we'll wait for that to be seen or shown. It would be great if Bob could sit down with me and some of my physics friends and answer some of our more in-depth questions. And I think it might help explain why nothing that Bob Lazar has ever told us about physics has really helped us with any usable technology in the past 25 years. If you want to learn about some real possibilities for technology, especially anti-gravity, and you can check out my page, again, my website, and other videos that I've done on electrogravitics, and other types of anti-gravity based on Paulo Violette's book, Physics of Anti-Gravity Propulsion. I talk about a lot of the stuff he talked about, phase conjugation, Project Skyvault, electromagnetic beam propulsion, a lot of real top secret stuff that you won't find these other guys who supposedly do all this research, like Tom DeLonge. He doesn't really talk about any of this stuff, or he can't tell you about it. I don't quite understand it, but it's all there on my website if you want to learn about it and learn about some real physics. I encourage you all to go there.
Arguing that Bob Lazar is full of shit.
Yeah.
So again, not quite sure what the heck Tom DeLonge is really doing here with this team that he's put together. If he's just rehashing and recycling, 20-year-old crap information from people like Bob Lazar, and what his team of CIA and Skunk Works friends are really up to here with this rock star candidate that they've latched onto and teamed up with. From my perspective, it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense why these people would quit their jobs to join something like this, unless there's something bigger going on here. And although I'm still open and going to be doing more research, and I'm open to hear more information on this, and open to talk to these guys if they actually reply to me and get back to me. Right now, I'm tending towards the side that these guys are not the ones that are going to bring about disclosure or give us access to energy or spacefaring technologies that could liberate or save the average, working man out there. What it seems to me these guys are not the free energy and anti-gravity people. These guys are a different breed. These guys want to weaponize space, from what I can see. A way to convince the public that aliens are a threat, as this guy calls them, and has Tom now calling the UFO presence, that these extraterrestrials are now a threat. And this can only lead to one thing when you start talking like that, and that's the weaponization of space. And just a little thing I wanted to remind people. I put this video out, how a faked alien invasion could jumpstart the New World Order. And it has almost 850,000 views now, and I published this back in 2010. And I just want to replay it for those of you who have never heard it or seen it before, because its message is still important today.
Good morning. My name is Carol Rosen. In 1974, after being a 6th grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, "Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space." And I said, teachers don't stop until June. He said, "No, you have to understand, this is February, and we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies," he said, "against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids." And then he would repeat to me over and over, "And the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat." Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear on the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies.
Yep, they are all lies. It's just another way for the military-industrial complex to get us to spend more millions and trillions of dollars defending ourselves from an enemy that doesn't exist, which is their favorite thing to do, is create enemies that don't exist and create wars that aren't real that they can prop up and keep going.
I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization.
We do a lot at the company, right? So we're building essentially a science fiction version of Disney, okay? So we have 4 film franchises, not all of them about UFOs. One is kind of this Blade Runner, all about nightmares kind of thing. One is like an old Amblin Spielberg movie.
Who's making these things?
Oh, we are.
I mean, who's writing them?
I wrote the first one. I'm directing that.
You're directing too?
I wrote this script.
Look at you multi-talented motherfucker.
Well, look, that's where I'm going with most of this stuff. But the company, I had to get up and get going and set it up, and we bring in a CEO and all that kind of shit.
That's a bizarre formula, right? An entertainment company that's also gonna
do aerospace and science.
Yeah.
The heart of it is when we do what's called confirmation, not disclosure, confirmation. The heart of it is how do we tell stories that galvanize the human race and let them know a little bit more about what's going on, and how do we present them science so they understand that consciousness and a lot of other things are real? And how do we build a technology associated with those stories and with those science that can change the world? And that's why it's an academy.
Do they have?
So you're not interested in disclosure, but you want to come out with science that could change the world. Like, I don't get it. Like, do you even know what you're doing here? Do you have a clear scope? I would really like to talk to you on my show, because I could ask you a lot more specific questions and not let this kind of nonsense just slide and go to the wayside.
Do they have any pickled bodies anywhere? You believe they do. You can't say any more than that.
I'm not going to say any more than that.
Well, you said so much.
I know,
it's so
I know.
weird what you can and can't say.
Well, I could tell you other shit offline, probably. You know.
Okay, offline. I can't wait to end this podcast and
I don't know,
find out the real
don't
deal.
Kick me out.
I
so
won't
I
tell
can
anybody.
Tell you some weird shit.
So now, what's the timeline for moving forward with all this stuff?
Okay, so in the next few weeks, we're going to be releasing the first declassified videos of these advanced aerial threat UFOs, and they are current videos that were just caught, and with audio and everything of the people tracking them. And we're going to launch the beta version of the Community of Interest, which is the partnered website that's going to be hosting all this declassified information, where we're going to be having the hardcore conversations with people that want to understand this stuff. We're going to be also doing an experiment with that piece of metal to show the world that the technology is not only real, but it's demonstratable. And the videos are very much a proof of concept. You know, it's showing you, look, it works. You know, so we're going to build it. And
do you think it's going to be weird for people to take you seriously because you're a rock star? Like maybe if you were like some sort of a physicist or a scientist, they would listen to you more.
Well, you know, I remember when Elon came out.
No, because I'm a scientist and a physicist, and everyone's listening to Tom because he's a rock star. Nobody listens to scientists and physicists because 75% of the population can't understand anything about this stuff. So while I'll be holding my breath and waiting for Tom and his science team to show us this little experiment with levitating this piece of metal, and then I can rip it apart and tell whether it's electromagnetism or real anti-gravity that's causing this. And we'll wait for more of these UFO videos to come out showing these advanced aerial threats. Really, it just seems like they're priming the public for this idea that UFOs are threats, and it's just priming them for either a weaponization of space or some sort of faked alien invasion or faked contact, first contact or something. I don't have any other answers or explanation for this right now. Am I the only one, or does anybody else kind of see this angle starting to emerge out of this whole mess? In any case, a lot of people have pointed out that Tom DeLonge was at the White House meeting here with John Podesta, who was also a UFO buff for Hillary Clinton. So it really makes you wonder if Tom himself is really involved in some sort of legitimate operation in all this, or whether he's just a willing dupe. You know, a rock star with the overinflated rock star ego and really not the educational and technical science background to sort of cut through this and sort the wheat from the chaff. So it looks like we're going to get a lot of disinformation out of this regardless. So overall, I'm just not getting a really good, warm, fuzzy feeling from this whole group and what they're trying to do and the things that I've heard so far. In fact, the feeling I get is quite the opposite. In the next few months, I'm going to be doing a very thorough investigation into all these members of the team and their background and their intentions and why they're doing all this. As an avid UFO researcher and conspiracy buff for the past 20 years, I have a lot of questions for all of these guys. And stay tuned. Please leave your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns in the comments below.
Hey guys, I just want to say, what's up all the sheep out there who believe all this nonsense? Bah!